The Racing Pod
on Off the Ball
with William Hill. Who you got? 18 plus. See gamblingcare.ie.
And you're welcome to episode 53, The Racing Pod on Off the Ball with Duggan and Johnny Ward. Remember, we're here every week with analysis, interviews, tips, cracks, stories. The first half of the pod each week is free to air. The second part is exclusively for members, so be sure to sign up now by going to offtheball.com/join. This week for members, we're going to look at Sunday's action at Ferryhouse, the big Grade 1 day there, and also get Johnny's charity bet, so subscribe now, folks. Johnny, how's the form?
I'm very well, JD. I'm actually recording this while I'm down in Kerry here. It's a very wild day, but just looking ahead of the weekend's action in Ireland. It's not necessarily true, certainly in Newbury, a place like that the ground is going to actually be that bad. So differences in the weather over the two islands. But we've had, I thought last weekend was just an amazing weekend of racing, and we have another cracker to come.
So let's just look back, if we can, on last weekend, Johnny. The John Durkin Memorial Chase at Punchestown. Jimmy Mangan, who trained the runner-up Spillane Tower, said it was the best race he's ever been involved in. We're talking about a Grand National winning trainer here. That's how high he rated this John Durkin.
Yeah, and it's just, the difference, again, JD, we've been harping on about this for a long time. The difference it makes when you have different trainers involved. Willie Mullins won the race for Fact to File, but Jimmy Mangan, with an 18-1 shot, Spillane Tower, sent to him by JP McManus, for him and Martin Brassil didn't have the favourite in the race. This race just had everything. Pretty much there was one non-runner, but we had the Ave runners, we had the each-way place in the race. Galloping Deschamps, Dual Gold Cup winner, taking on Fast or Slow again at Punchestown, which is the latter's kind of favourite stomping ground. But then the two horses, the sophomore sort of chasers, fighting out the finish. And it was such an interesting race from a betting perspective as well. You go to Punchestown at the races on Sunday. You have an 8-runner race with Fast or Slow, a 6-4 favourite. It's a really, really short price for Fast or Slow. When he's normally way, way bigger than that, taking on Galloping Deschamps, who he's usually much bigger than in the betting. Spillane Tower, who went out from sort of 7-8-1 to 18-1. But if you went racing, JD, and you saw Spillane Tower in the ring and you're happy enough with how he looked, you got great each-way value in the race. And it just left so many questions unanswered in terms of the staying division going forward this season, because the ground was relatively testing, but it was 2 miles, 3 furlongs, 150 yards, and it had everything the race. The ride that Galloping Deschamps got from Paul Townend to try to take the sting out of his rivals. Fast or Slow, ridden by an amateur, and Derek O'Connor, who just wasn't quite good enough on the day, didn't run badly. I thought it was an epic race. So
what do you take out of it in terms of the future? Do you see it as a changing of the guard, where Factified and Spillane Tower are the new kids in the block versus Galloping Deschamps and Fast or Slow, who've been the kings of this division?
Yeah, I don't know what you made of it, JD, but for when you're on Galloping Deschamps and you're in that level of staying chasing at the top level for so long, it's very, very difficult. He had an awfully hard race in the Gold Cup last year. I wasn't surprised, I have to say, that he was beating a Punchestown on his return now on his last run of the season. I did feel he was a bit of value given his form last Sunday, and he did run a good race, but you'd have to think the two of them are a little bit vulnerable. Like Factor File on ratings, he'd about £15 to find with
17, yeah.
17, yeah. First run out of that division. And the way he and Spillane Tower came to the last, you're sort of thinking, is this the sort of changing of the guard? But Galloping Deschamps on testing ground over 3 miles, I certainly wouldn't be ruling him out of winning anything as the season goes on, but I felt the 2 second season novices ran exceptional races given their relative inexperience. Again with Spillane Tower, he stays 3 miles well, so for him it was a spectacular return as much as it could be without winning. But this division, we still have some other horses to see in this division. It's going to be absolutely spectacular, albeit very Irish dominated this year.
So if I was to ask you who the Gold Cup winner at Cheltenham would be now next March, who would you make the favourite for it?
It's very, very tough. I still feel I know the way you're thinking. If to go down that route with him, he could be a big, big player in that. Possibly en route to win the Grand National. He was beaten about 30 lengths in the race, but I wouldn't be too dismissive of him, and he's Cheltenham form, so he's probably the one to be looking at the prices. I'd have to say I'd make Fact to File favourite, JD, though. He was such a good novice. He skipped his hurling campaign. And that performance on his comeback, he was weak in the betting as well. Remember, we spoke here on Friday that 5-2 seemed very short. He was available at nearly 5-1, so you could back him at the guts of 5-1 on the track. So he was weak in the betting, came back in a little bit, so maybe he'll come on for the run as well. But I feel he probably is the horse to beat in the division. I don't know what you think.
I think that it's amazing that you had a dual Gold Cup winner in Album Photo and a dual Gold Cup winner in Galloping Deschamps, and this lad might be better than Bear them. That's what I find amazing. And also, Willie Mullins knows. I mean, if he's going to send a horse to Florida Pearl Rouge, he knows it's special. Like, the horse has to say sound, that's one thing. But even watching back his Novice Chase win at Cheltenham last March was pretty effortless. So he's something else. And Spillane Tower, look, I think he'll love that Cheltenham Hill if he gets there for the Gold Cup. I mean, what is JB McManus going to do? Is he going to run 2 horses in the Gold Cup? I got up on the Champs. I wouldn't rule out yet because I think Leopardstown will show the best of him. But Fast or Slow, I might just feel that not so sure if it's going to work for him in the Gold Cup with these pretenders coming through. But that was the John Durkin. The Morgiana then, Brighter Days Ahead. The mare, was it the fact that she had a run and State Man didn't that made the difference, do you think?
Yeah, I'd be wary of saying that. Like, I mean, if Willie Mullins has a horse coming back from an absence of like 2 years, it's not even factored into the betting. I mean, you see this time and time again when we extolled the kind of history and the reliability of State Man with Jane Mangan here last Friday, and I don't feel he'd any real excuse. He was taking on a mare who'd had a run, but State Man, when you're trained by Willie Mullins, and fair enough, like, you are being trained for the season ahead, but I don't feel it was really an excuse. It was a fascinating race to watch, and it was so disappointed that Lossie Mouth didn't run. It looks like she's going to line up in Newcastle now in the Fighting Fifth. But
she's going to be in the race at the Hatton's Grace. That's where she's going.
The Hatton's Grace, rather. Sorry. Obviously, Willie's other horse is going to go to the Fighting Fifth. Might be a 3-runner, 4-runner Hatton's Grace against Teahupoo, but it was just disappointing that she was declared and didn't run with the stone bruise. But she's obviously recovered a week later. I just felt because it would have made the race even more compelling as it was. Jack Kennedy, the way he rode the horse, JD, Brighter Days Ahead, like, there was definite doubt about her jumping, definite doubt about whether she'd be good enough to beat State Man. And, they were talking about potentially going chasing with her this season. She was beaten in Cheltenham last year. So Jack had to kind of maybe ride her to the effect that he'd try to take any sort of edge of race fitness, take that into account, but save something off the last. And he got a decent jump off the last when, in fairness, he did look beaten. She rallied so well. And I know it was only effectively a 2-horse race, but you only need 2 horses if they're fairly closely matched and you have 2 of the best jockeys in the business on them. And for me, I wouldn't be confident State Man will turn it around with her next time. She's a lot of upside. She's young. She's had no experience at this level whatsoever. He's had plenty of it. We've seen with him, he has his limitations when he takes on the likes of Constitution Hill, as everyone does. But yeah, I wouldn't be overly confident that he'd reverse the form next time.
Touch Me Not was a horse worth following, I think, Johnny. Imagine him doing well in the Spring Festivals on good ground. He really jumped well. He really got a good tune from Sam Ewing to win the Craddockstown Novice Chase. So they might put him away, but he's one to watch. Touch Me Not in the Michael O'Leary colours.
Yeah, I actually thought we saw some very good novices in general, and Sam Ewing's had an excellent time. With Jack Kennedy's kind of been injured, but he's sort of been taking over rides, just good rides in general. He beat Far and Glory, I was talking about going into the race. I wasn't really sure what to make of Far and Glory, but Touch Me Not was really, really good. Very strong off the last as well. Some good horses in behind, and it was a very good performance. Be interested to see what distance they want to go with him going forward, JD. But he's a horse of immense potential, can definitely go out and trip. Whatever his best trip will be, but it was an excellent performance. And again, a horse was obviously very backable at 8-1.
There was a few other storylines this week. Willie Mullins did a stable tour, which is across the papers, which was interesting as always because he's the main man. Just spoke about the fact that, reading in the Examiner, I'm here to make a living first and then we see what happens after that. And that was quite a nice way of putting it from Willie. And then he talked about Fact to File could be supplemented for the King George. And Gaelic Warrior looks like he's going to go the 2-mile route, Johnny.
Yeah, I mean, the soundings from Willie, I think, after Cheltenham last year was that he would like to do that. Like when Gaelic Warrior won I actually laid him, I remember, at Punchestown over hurdles when he went up 3 miles. I wasn't sure he'd get it at all. And he was exceptional that day, like beat a decent field and stayed very well. So I was fully expecting him to be an RSA horse last year. But then sort of things changed. And I'd still worry, JD, about his jumping over 2 miles. It's maybe you can say it's equally runnable over 3 miles, but in that division, for him, like, he does jump out to the right. If he was to go down the Queen Mother route, it would have been interesting to see. For me, if he went to King George, I would have thought that was fascinating. The King George is kind of very up in the air now because we've had horses either they're not going to run or they've sort of blown out in their seasonal return. But if we do see his stablemate go there, that'll be very interesting. I'd love to see one of them run the King George. It's one of my favourite races. But Gaelic Warrior, he still has a tendency to run disappointingly as well. So I wouldn't be sure about him as a champion chase horse this season.
Yeah, I don't think the King George is the race it was, I'm afraid. Barry Conlon and then Michael O'Sullivan splitting. The young Cork jockey had a great win with Barry with Marine Nationale there in the Supreme Novices a couple of seasons ago, but they've gone their separate ways. Look, that's racing.
That's racing, yeah. Like, I mean, I mean, I don't know. I suppose Michael is doing, bits of riding for Willie Mullins, and with respect to Barry, like it's still quite a small operation, and Barry's gone through a few jockeys as an owner and so on, and it is what it is. Michael's very talented. I think you do have to see, being a jockey, JD, is as much about ability, as much about opportunities as ability. You look at Darragh O'Keefe, the season that he's having. Rachel Blackmore's had a bad fall in Downpatrick, and that has kind of left rides open for the likes of Darragh. And he's really coming into the fold now, like winning big races at Cheltenham, winning big races over here, winning a lot of races this season already. And maybe Michael O'Sullivan is looking at that he's not quite getting the opportunities, and maybe it's better to go and be a proper freelance. But he's still a very talented rider. We'll see where it goes for him going forward. But that did come a little bit out of the blue, I suppose.
Okay, let's look ahead to some previews, Johnny. Fairyhouse on Saturday, the Willow Worm Hurdle for 4-year-olds is 155 over 2 miles, 8 runners. Your favourite, your little favourite here, Bottler Secret's in this course and distance winner. Probably needed the run at Cheltenham. Are you going to be following him again this season?
Yeah, like he was disappointing at Cheltenham. Now he's, I think he sort of had other options this weekend, but this looked a good option to go. I mean, again, it's 18 grand prize money, JD. It kind of shows where we're at with our prize money, but this race seems a reasonable option for him to go as a 4-year-old. I felt the race at Cheltenham was a bit of a mess. Like the hurdles dialed off. Maybe he needed to run a bit, and then the ground was probably a little bit on the quick side for him, and it will be softer at Fairyhouse. Spoke to Gavin Cromwell afterwards. I did feel he was readily forgiving the horse. The one worry I'd have about him, JD, is he wasn't and isn't the biggest horse in the world. So there is the potential that he's not going to really, really train on as a hurdler. And that might sound like nonsense now, but big horses are bought for a lot of money with good reason, because the implication is that they get better with age and obviously physical improvement. So that'll be a small concern for me. Like Calaconte was very, very good at Down Royal the last day, and if the 8 of these show up, this is a really, really good contest. Paul Townend is riding Anzadam, who could well go off favourite, having come from the route of France. But I'd give Bottler Secret another chance. He's given weight away, but I definitely feel in his juvenile form he's the horse to beat. I'm
with Calaconte, won a grade 2 at Leopardstown last season. I think she'll improve for that win at Down Royal. The conditions, no issue. Jack Kennedy rides. Like Anzadam could be absolutely anything but by the Donnellys out of France, as you say, Johnny, but hasn't run in the years. So you're taking it on trust if you're going to have a bet on Anzadam. So I'm going to stick with Calaconte. Yeah, and Calaconte, I mean, I think Tom Malone was standing in for you the day we did the Down Royal preview, and he made the point like this horse could be just so well treated off 130. And a lot of horses, ex-juveniles or 4-year-olds who've sort of finished their juvenile campaign, they can be quite well treated. And Calaconte, as you say, JD, she was matching it against the best really last season, the likes of Cargesi and that. And here she was run off 130 last year. She has gone up to 138, which makes her a very viable candidate in this company. Fighting fifth hurdle at Newcastle on Saturday. Good ground there, 10 past 2, 9 runners. Is this about 2 horses, Mystical Power and Sergino? Would it be one of those 2 wins? You'd just be disappointed for the race if it isn't. And like that's not to say, that's not to say on form. Like even you look at the likes of Brentford Hope, loves around Newcastle. He's rated 148, which isn't a bad rating in a race like this. And the last day, he's race fit, and he's been, in fairness, I think he was favoured for the Derby at one time, this horse. But anyway, he's a reliable horse. But I'm just kind of thinking, like I was at Punchestown when he was beaten 5 lengths by Daddy Longlegs in a handicap last year. Surely, like that's not going to be nearly good. Daddy Longlegs wouldn't I imagine, and we wouldn't be anywhere near as good as Mystical Power. I was very sweet Mystical Power last year at Punchestown, JD. I thought it was a good performance. Looking at him then, the way the race panned out as he develops with age and race, and I was thinking, he looks to me like a horse that wants at least 2.5 miles. He's obviously out of any power by Galileo. It's an unorthodox pedigree when you send Galileo to a jumper, but it's hard to know in terms of
where he wants trip-wise. I do feel he wants further, and he just might be done for pacer by Sergino. It's a hard race to call, because obviously how do I compare Sergino, who was a juvenile last season, to Mystical Power, who was a novice last season, to Brentford Hope, who was an experienced handicapper? And it's hard. You can look at various factors of speed and all sorts, but you have to kind of go with your feel as well. And Sergino, for me, beat Cargese at Aintree, but that performance beating Burdev Road was absolutely exceptional, I thought. And when he did go to Aintree, he'd obviously missed Cheltenham. He's had very little race in this horse, and the performance to beat the subsequent Cheltenham winner Burdev Road at Cheltenham last January was exceptional. I'd be surprised if he's not favourite. Obviously, this race was so much of it was about will Constitution Hill run, will he not? This guy could be well up to being his replacement.
Yeah, look, I think it's all about potential, isn't it, with Sergino? And we're waiting to see, can he replicate that Burdett Road performance? Because he was almost going to take off like an airplane when he went through the winning line at Cheltenham. The Cargese race then at Aintree was a muddling affair. Mystical Power has one or two festivals, but I think you're right. Mystical Power kind of needs to be wound up. And eventually, when he finds it, he's able to have that turn of foot. But getting wound up on a flat track over 2 miles, first run of the season, maybe Sergino might be the answer. Quijava was second in the Ebor, but hasn't been able really to translate that flat form to hurdle so far. So I think it is probably Sergino for me, slightly over Mystical Power. But then again, you wouldn't be surprised if Mystical Power won. That's probably the way I'd conclude the analysis of that one. Then we have at Newbury on Saturday, what used to be called the Hennessy Gold Cup. The Coral Gold Cup handicap chase, 3 o'clock, 3 miles, 2 furlongs, 14 runners. This is the Gold Cup trip. We have Haransu Dairy for Winnie Mullins and Senior Chief for Henry de Bramhead. I really think Senior Chief is a contender here, Johnny. Only 7 years of age, only had 10 runs. A nice win on decent ground at Cheltenham last time out. May still be reasonably handicapped. Are you in the same boat?
I'm not, but I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you. Like, he won, that was when he beat his stalemates, the Short Go. That was probably Darrell's first big win of the season, or certainly Darrell O'Keefe's first big win that sort of advertised how well he was doing. But like, he's a 7-year-old trained by Henry de Bromhead. Actually, what impressed me at Cheltenham was how much he found off the last, when he travelled very well, but then the Short Go rallied so strongly from the last. I was actually surprised. He went on and won again by a length of a quarter. He's a funny one, because he is quite ground versatile, and the ground, like, I was looking at this race earlier in the most westerly part of Europe, pretty much on the Sleigh Head, and I was looking up the form of the race, and it was lashing rain here, and it was really wild, and I was thinking, right, this is going to suit Grandero Bello as all this rain goes across to Newbury and across to England. But I'm not actually sure the ground is going to change that much. They're calling it good to soft. It was a cold day in Newbury today on Thursday as we record this. That would be my worry, because I spoke to Eddie Harty, who's half the trainer. Eddie and Patrick train Grandero Bello. I spoke to him subsequent to the horse's win at Galway when he beat Tire Kicker, and this was very much the aim. And he'd been off since March, and he'd only run once since April of 2023, so he hasn't done that much racing in recent years. I think Barry Geraghty might have procured him out of a point to point, but in any event, he was very good at Galway for his return. He was 22-1, so I think he would have needed the run. That was off 147 here, with taking into account the British discrepancy, isn't bad. But I'd be very, very sweet in this horse if the ground were soft or worse. Definitely less sweet on him with the ground as it is. Can Do Kid is interesting. Paul Nichols, typical Paul Nichols, giving the horse a wind up, comes back here after that run at Aintree when he was a very gutsy third. There are plenty in the race you could give a chance to Jiddy. I suppose one thing that surprised me, 14 runners, I would have expected a bit more than that for a race of this nature, but tentatively with Grandero Bello, I'm worried about the ground though. Okay,
yeah, we're talking about 20-1 Grandero Bello. So bit of money as we record this for Emastered, who was second in the race a couple of years ago. Bit of money for General and Chef, who's only ever run in France, was third in the Grand Steeplechase de Paris back in the spring. This is the Noel George half-trained horse, and we're looking at Senior Chief attracting a bit of money as we record this as well. So there's a horse there, Venetia Williams, who's only a 6-year-old. Victorino won 2 3-mile chases at Ascot last season as a 5-year-old. That's hard to do. Then his form tailed off, which is not too unexpected. Could go well fresh. Venetia Williams, she's really experienced these types of races, and if the horse is fresh, might have an each-way chance. Victorino.
Absolutely, and even the likes of Iron Bridge, Victorino, who obviously coming back off first run back, at least with regard to Iron Bridge. Iron Bridge ran the last behind Valdancer, but was second to Nassalam, and that utterly extraordinary renewal of the Welsh national last year when he was second but beaten 34 lengths. But he's come down 6 pounds of the weights. He didn't run badly the last day, and he's generally sent off a lot shorter than this. I said the likely favourite in the race, maybe Colonel Harry JD. That form from last season behind the likes of Grey Dawning and Ilete Toms. Obviously reads quite well. Second to Carlisle on the comeback was okay, but it's a very, very tough race. I know Willie's been, Willie, we're recording this on Thursday. Willie took all his horses out of third today, which is extraordinary. Looks like Ronso Derry is going to go over as a stable pick. Second, really well back to the Munster National the last day. 4 pounds higher here. I feel this is a far better race than the Munster National, so it's a tough race to solve.
So you're going to go for Grandero Bello, maybe? Small nibble each way?
Yeah. Even good to soft might be okay. It's not that the horse has not that the horse doesn't have form on sort of bad ground. Was second to the Devil's Coachman in what was effectively a match at Limerick in March last year. That was on soft. The ground wouldn't have been too bad that time, and was second to Braun, who's not a bad horse as well on soft ground. Just did sound like Eddie Harty would be of view that the softer the ground the better.
Okay, my free to air selection for the radio folks. JD's selection is Senior Chief each way in this Carl Gold Cup Handicap Chase Newbury on Saturday 3 o'clock, about 8-1 each way for Henry de Bromhead and Darragh O'Keefe. Senior Chief is my selection for the radio. This is the Racing Pod on Off the Ball. If you're listening to the free version of the podcast, we're leaving you here. If you're looking for more, including Johnny's charity bet and our preview of Sunday Punchestown, go to offtheball.com/join to subscribe and get the full podcast with all of our racing tips, insights and stories from the week's action.